Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Around the World. In the present time, trade is no longer just a means of economic gain, but has become the most effective weapon for geopolitical power balance. As trade and diplomacy have become complementary to each other in today's global order. In fact, issues such as the US-China trade tensions, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and energy security indicate that economic policies are no longer confined to markets alone, but are also shaping global politics. Against this backdrop, India and the European Union are taking concrete steps to elevate their relations to new heights and move towards a potential free trade agreement. This raises various questions. Will this agreement truly write a new economic chapter between India and the EU, or is it merely part of a geopolitical strategy? And will India gain long-term benefits from it, or will this FTA influence the global power balance? We will try to find answers to these questions in this video. Let's begin the discussion. On 28 February, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a meeting in New Delhi. In this discussion, both leaders agreed to accelerate efforts to finalize a comprehensive free trade agreement by the end of the year. The key reasons behind this decision include global geopolitical tensions, the need to diversify trade supply chains, and strengthening the India-EU strategic partnership. Meanwhile, von der Leyen called for an ambitious trade and investment agreement covering key industries such as batteries, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, clean hydrogen, and defense. It is noteworthy that this discussion resumed in 2021 after an 8-year hiatus and is now addressing issues ranging from investment protection to intellectual property rights. In 2023-24, bilateral trade reached $137.5 billion, making the EU India's largest trading partner in goods. However, some major challenges remain concerning this agreement. The key issues include additional tariffs imposed by the EU on high carbon emission goods, access to the EU market for Indian generic medicines, tariff reductions, data security, and consensus on intellectual property rights. Despite these challenges, both sides have emphasized strengthening their cooperation amid geopolitical instability. The economic, scientific, cultural, and strategic ties between India and the EU are deeply rooted and diverse. They have established a strong partnership in areas such as trade, investment, technology, education, and security. The EU is India's largest trading partner, accounting for 12.2% of India's total trade in goods in 2023. On the other hand, India is the EU's 9th largest trading partner, representing 2.2% of the EU's total trade in goods in 2023. In the services sector, bilateral trade reached €59.7 billion in 2023. Meanwhile, India and the UK have also resumed their FTA negotiations in January 2025. The UK is seeking tariff reductions in the Indian market for its food, automobile, and whiskey products, while India is hoping for simplified visa processes and social security agreements for its professionals. Disagreements over visa policies had stalled negotiations for almost a year, but now both sides are eager to reach an agreement. Experts believe that the India-EU Free Trade Agreement could prove economically and strategically beneficial for both parties. Beyond trade and investment, this agreement will also promote innovation, technological partnerships, and sustainable development. However, both sides will need to strike a balance in sensitive areas. Additionally, to assess the impact of the FTA, governments must focus on manufacturing, environmental effects, and employment opportunities. Moreover, under global commitments to combat climate change, India and the EU must maintain a balance between trade and sustainable development. Cooperation in green energy, renewable resources, and digital trade could further strengthen this relationship. Notably, reaching a consensus on digital trade agreements and data security will be a crucial aspect. However, this agreement could have a far-reaching impact on global power balance, strategic partnerships, and regional influence. India, which is strengthening its global role, and the EU, which aims to reduce its dependence on China, both stand to gain strategically from this agreement. For the US, the India-EU FTA presents a mixed scenario. On the one hand, it could alter the traditional trade structure between the US and Europe, exposing US companies to new competition. On the other hand, the US, which views India as a key partner in counterbalancing China's influence, may see this agreement as a positive signal of India's emergence as a global power. For Russia, however, this agreement could be challenging, as increasing India-EU trade could reduce India's traditional dependence on Russia for energy and defense. The European Union, which has imposed strict economic sanctions on Russia following the Ukraine war, may seek to limit Russia's influence by opening an independent trade route with India. Nevertheless, India will aim to maintain its strategic economy and balance its defense and energy cooperation with Russia. From an international perspective, the India-EU FTA will strengthen a multipolar world order, enhancing India's role as a robust trading and diplomatic power. Now it's time for this program's Sunday special segment, The World Around Us, where we will discuss other important international news. In recent days, the blackout in Chile affected 90% of the country's population. As a result of this power outage, most areas, including the capital Santiago, were plunged into darkness. It is worth mentioning that this blackout occurred due to a fault in a high-voltage transmission line in northern Chile, which disrupted the nationwide electricity system. Following this incident, the government declared a state of emergency and imposed a curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. This power outage also impacted the operations of major copper mines, including Escondida and Codelco. Recently, the Mauritian Prime Minister Naveen Ramgoolam announced that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Port Louis on 11th to 12th March and will be the chief guest of Mauritius's 57th National Day celebrations. Addressing the Parliament, Ramgoolam described this as a special honor for Mauritius, especially considering Modi's busy international travel schedule. He stated that this visit is a testament to the close ties between India and Mauritius. It is noteworthy that Mauritius celebrates its independence and its transition to a republic on 12th March. In November 2024, Modi had also congratulated Ramgoolam on his electoral victory. The relations between India and Mauritius are based on history, demographics, and culture, with 70% of the population being of Indian origin. Along with increasing tariffs on Chinese imports, President Donald Trump plans to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico from 4th March 2025. He has cited the need to curb drug trafficking as the reason for this move. This decision has increased instability in the global economy, leading to declines in several stock markets. Trump is planning to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, along with a 10% tax on Canadian energy products. Both countries have opposed this move, but discussions are ongoing. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau are hopeful for a resolution. So viewers, let's conclude our discussion here and note today's question. Analyze the potential benefits and challenges of the proposed free trade agreement between India and the European Union.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.